Lee Suho's wrinkled hands shook as he scrolled through the datapad. His old eyes narrowed at the bright screen in the dim corridor of Station Omega. The trafficking manifest made his stomach turn. Young alien females listed with prices, like they were nothing more than furniture or livestock. At 72, Suho's weathered face showed every year of his service in the Earth Defense Force. His silver hair, once jet black, was neatly combed despite the station's artificial gravity playing tricks on his balance. He wore simple civilian clothes now, but his military bearing remained evident in his straight spine and alert eyes. The bustling market level of Station Omega carried on around him, traders and travelers pushing past without a second glance at the elderly human. Music and chatter from nearby shops mixed with the hum of the station's life support systems. But Suho stood frozen, his mind racing back to darker times. 40 years in the EDF had shown him humanity's best and worst. He'd fought in the First Contact War, seen entire colonies reduced to ash, and helped forge the peace that followed. But this was something that turned his battle-hardened stomach. The manifest detailed everything: species, age, physical condition, and estimated market value. Some were listed as slightly damaged or requires rehabilitation, euphemisms that made his jaw clench. Suho had seen similar reports during the war, when the Drachnid Empire treated prisoners as commodities. He watched a group of well-dressed merchants stroll past, laughing and discussing profit margins. Their expensive clothes and jewelry spoke of wealth built on others' misery. Suho's hand instinctively moved to where his sidearm used to rest, but those days were long behind him. His retirement fund sat untouched in his account, credits saved from 4 decades of service, meant for a quiet life on Earth or one of the colony worlds. But as he studied the manifest, those plans crumbled like space dust. A message flashed across his datapad. Auction begins in 30 minutes. Premium stock available. The words made bile rise in his throat. Suho remembered finding slave camps during the war, remembered the hollow eyes of the survivors. He'd sworn then that he'd never walk past suffering again. Moving carefully to avoid attention, Suho made his way to a quiet corner and checked his accounts. The numbers were good, more than enough to buy freedom for several of the captives. Not all of them, a fact that would haunt him, but enough to make a difference. The station's security forces were useless here. Too many palms greased, too many blind eyes turned. Legal channels would take months, years even, while lives were ruined. Suho had spent too long following regulations while evil men found loopholes. He straightened his jacket and headed toward the auction house. Young station residents darted around him, some giving the slow-moving elder irritated glances. Let them look, he thought. They saw only a frail old man, and that suited his purposes perfectly. The auction house entrance loomed ahead, its gaudy decorations a mockery of the misery within. Suho paused, thinking of his comfortable apartment back on Earth, the peaceful retirement he'd planned. Then he thought of the manifest, of young lives about to be sold into darkness. His arthritis bothered him more than usual as he climbed the steps, but Suho ignored the pain. He'd fought through worse, much worse. The guards at the door barely glanced at him. Just another wealthy retiree looking for exotic servants, they assumed. Inside, the auction house gleamed with false luxury. Well-dressed buyers sipped expensive drinks while examining holo projections of the merchandise. Suho's combat-trained eyes noted exits, security positions, potential threats. Old habits died hard. He found a quiet corner to observe from, his presence dismissed by the younger buyers. Suho saw the way they looked at him, ancient, harmless, irrelevant. Good. Let them underestimate him. He'd used similar assumptions to his advantage in countless operations. The auctioneer began organizing his notes, preparing to start the bidding. Suho's fingers tightened around his datapad. He had no real plan beyond buying as many captives as he could afford. The details of their escape and safety would come later. He'd always worked best under pressure. A chime announced the auction's start. Suho took a deep breath. steadying himself as he had before countless battles. This wasn't the retirement he'd imagined, but it was the one he'd chosen. Some fights were worth sacrificing everything for. The first group of captives was led onto the display platform. Suho's jaw clenched at their fear, their resignation. Not for much longer, he promised silently. He might be old, might be tired, but he still had one good fight left in him. As the bidding began, Suho raised his hand. The auctioneer's eyebrows lifted slightly at the elderly human's interest. Let them wonder, let them assume. He'd worn many masks during his career. This would be his last and most important performance. His retirement fund would be gone by day's end, but Suho felt lighter than he had in years. Some battles were fought with weapons, others with credits. But the goal remained the same, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The old soldier straightened his spine, raised his bid card, and prepared for one final mission. The stench of fear and cheap chemical stimulants filled the cramped back room of the auction house. Suho stood firm, his old soldier's training helping him maintain a neutral expression as he faced the trafficking ring's leader. The man's expensive clothes couldn't hide his true nature. Suho had seen enough predators in his time to recognize one. Quite the collection you're buying, old man, the ringleader sneered, his gold teeth glinting in the dim light. 5 of them. Sure you can handle that many. Servants. His emphasis on the last word made Suho's fists clench beneath his long sleeves. The credit transfer completed with a soft chime. Suho's life savings, gone in an instant. The ringleader checked his datapad and nodded to his guards. They shoved 5 alien females forward, all of them stumbling in their restraints. Han Myre, the zenith, caught Suho's attention first. Her crystalline form would have been beautiful if not for the fear clouding her facets. Each movement caused small rainbow refractions, but they were dull and lifeless. Her crystal structure showed signs of neglect, small cracks and cloudy patches that spoke of mistreatment. Beside her, Park Jae-yun tried to fold her damaged wings closer to her body. The Avari's feather-like membranes were meant to shimmer with colors that reflected her emotions, but now they hung limp and gray. Her large bird-like eyes darted between the guards, looking for threats. Kim Da-mai, the Lumina, flickered like a dying light bulb. Her energy-based form should have glowed with steady brightness, but stress and poor conditions had left her barely able to maintain her humanoid shape. Static crackled around her occasionally, signs of failing control. Li Yuna's plant-like body showed similar signs of neglect. The South's vine hair drooped lifelessly, and her green-tinted skin had patches of brown. Her leaves rustled with each trembling breath, making a sound like autumn trees in the wind. Kang Hana, the Aquari, looked the worst. Her water-based biology required constant hydration, but the traffickers had kept her barely wet enough to survive. Her usually fluid-like skin had a crusty appearance, and her gills fluttered weakly. The papers are processed, the ringleader said, sliding a datapad across the table. They're all yours. Though I must say, you've got unusual taste for an old-timer. He laughed, the sound echoing off the metal walls. Suho signed the documents without a word. Speaking might break his carefully maintained facade of calm. The girls watched him with varying degrees of fear and resignation. They'd been sold before, he realized. They expected just another owner. You'll need these, the ringleader added, tossing over a set of control devices. They're all tagged and tracked. Standard procedure, you understand. Wouldn't want your investments running off. Suho caught the controllers, his old reflexes still sharp. He pocketed them without looking, already planning how to disable the tracking devices once they were safely away. Come, he said softly to the 5 aliens, speaking for the first time. He kept his voice gentle, grandfather-like. We're leaving. They shuffled after him, chains clinking. The guards snickered, probably imagining what horrors the old man had planned. Suho let them think what they wanted. He'd learned long ago that sometimes the best disguise was letting others believe the worst. The walk through Station Omega's corridors was tense. Suho kept a slow pace, matching the shuffling steps of his charges. Other station residents gave them a wide berth. Slavery might be illegal in most of civilized space, but here in the frontier, people knew better than to interfere. Mei Rei's crystal form clinked softly as she walked. Jai Yun's damaged wings dragged on the floor. Dame's flickering cast strange shadows on the walls. Yuna's leaves rustled with each step. Haina's dry skin made a scratching sound that hurt Suho's heart to hear. They'd reached his small ship without incident. The vessel was old but well-maintained, another remnant of his military days. Suho helped each girl aboard, noting how they flinched at his touch. That would take time to heal, he knew. Trust had to be earned. Once in the ship's cabin, Suho pulled out the tracking controllers. The girls tensed, probably expecting punishment. Instead, he set the devices on the floor and crushed them under his boot heel. 5 pairs of eyes widened in surprise. Suho smiled, his first real smile since entering the auction house. The tracking bands will take more work to remove safely, he explained, but we'll handle that once we're away from the station. Understanding dawned slowly on their faces. Mei Rei's facets brightened slightly. Jai Yun's wings twitched with hope. Dame's flickering steadied. Yuna's leaves perked up. Haina's dry skin seemed to smooth a little. My name is Li Suho, he said, settling into the pilot's chair. And you are not my property. You are not anyone's property. You are free. I bought your freedom, not your lives. As the ship's engines hummed to life, Suho saw tears forming. Crystal drops from Mei Rei, glowing droplets from Damai, dewdrops from Yuna, and pure water spheres from Hana. Jai Yun's wings lifted slightly, showing their first color in who knew how long. The station fell away behind them, and with it, the girls' past lives as slaves. Suho set course for his homestead, already planning how to help each of them heal and recover. It wouldn't be easy, but then nothing worthwhile ever was. His retirement savings were gone, but as Suho watched his 5 passengers begin to relax, he knew he'd never spent money better. Some things were worth more than credits, like the first real smile he saw spreading across Mei Rei's crystalline face. The small ship touched down gently on New Jeju's soil as the twin suns rose over the horizon. Suho's homestead sat nestled in a quiet valley, its modest buildings surrounded by carefully tended gardens and a crystal-clear lake. The artificial atmosphere dome sparkled above them, protecting the settlement from the planet's harsh natural environment. This is home, Suho announced softly, helping each of his companions down the ship's ramp. Their chains had been removed during the journey, though the girls still moved cautiously, as if expecting restraints to materialize at any moment. The main house was a traditional Korean hanok design, adapted for off-world living. Solar panels lined the curved roof, and the wooden walls were reinforced with local materials. A large sunroom extended from one side, its windows designed to capture maximum light from both suns. Mei Rei stepped onto the path first, her crystalline form catching the morning light. For the first time since Suho had met her, her facets began to sparkle naturally. Rainbow patterns danced across the ground around her feet. The sunroom is yours, if you'd like it, Suho told her. The light there is strongest. Mei Rei's whole form seemed to brighten at the suggestion, and she moved toward it with newfound energy. Jai Yun looked upward at the dome's height, her damaged wings twitching with longing. The atmospheric pressure here is adjusted, Suho explained. It should help your wings heal properly. The Avari's eyes filled with tears of hope. Damai flickered nervously until Suho showed her the garden's meditation space. No electronics here, he said. Just quiet. You can practice controlling your energy without interference. The luminous form steadied slightly as she settled onto a stone bench. Yuna's reaction to the vegetable gardens was immediate. Her vine-like hair began to wave gently, responding to the presence of other plants. Feel free to root yourself wherever you're comfortable, Suho told her. The soil here is rich in nutrients. The moment Hannah saw the lake, her dry skin began to smooth out. Suho led her to the water's edge. "It's filtered and mineral balanced," he explained. "You can stay in as long as you need." The aquari slipped into the water with a sound of pure relief. Over the next few days, Suho watched his unusual family begin to heal. Mayray spent hours in the sunroom, her crystal structure slowly repairing itself. The rainbows she cast grew stronger and more complex, turning the room into a constantly shifting light show. Jae-yun started with small glides in the garden, building up her strength. Each day her wings showed more color, the membrane healing as she exercised them carefully. Soon she was making short flights under the dome, her joy evident in the patterns that rippled across her wings. Dame's control improved in the peaceful environment. Her random energy surges decreased, and she learned to maintain a steady glow. In the evenings, she would create gentle light displays in the garden, her confidence growing with each successful demonstration. Yuna flourished among the vegetables, her green skin regaining its healthy glow. She took to tending the other plants, using her natural abilities to help them grow. The garden had never been so productive, and her own vine hair began sprouting tiny decorative flowers. Hannah transformed in the lake, her fluid form returning to its natural grace. She created beautiful underwater patterns with her movements, and the local fish seemed drawn to her presence. The lake became clearer and more vibrant under her influence. Suho established simple routines. Meals were served in the main house, giving everyone a chance to gather and talk. He taught them about Earth customs while learning about their own cultures. Slowly, their fear of him melted into trust. The girls began to move more freely around the homestead. Their laughter, each unique to their species, became a common sound. Mayray's crystal chimes, Jae-yun's musical trills, Demi's harmonic hum, Yuna's rustling giggles, and Hannah's liquid burbles filled the air. One evening, as Suho sat on the porch watching the sun set, he heard soft footsteps behind him. All 5 girls had gathered, each holding something they had made. Mirai presented a crystal sculpture that caught the light perfectly. Jae-yun offered a feather that shimmered with grateful colors. Damai created a small, stable light globe. Yuna had grown a beautiful flowering vine. Hannah brought a perfectly formed water sphere. "Thank you," they said together, their voices harmonizing in an unexpected way. "For giving us a home." Suho felt his old eyes growing wet. "No," he replied softly. "Thank you for making this place truly feel like home." As darkness fell, they sat together on the porch, a most unusual family finding peace under alien stars. Suho's military pension might be gone, but as he watched Mirai create crystal light shows while Jae-yun danced in the air above them, as Dilmai added her own lights to the display while Yuna's plants swayed and Hannah conducted water sprites in the lake, he knew he'd never been richer. Morning light filtered through Mirai's crystal form as she stood in the sunroom, creating music by allowing the rays to hit her facets in precise patterns. The resulting melodies drifted through the homestead, a gentle alarm clock that had become part of their daily routine. Suho sat at the kitchen table, carefully writing down phonetic translations of Zenith crystal speak in his notebook. Mirai had been teaching him the complex language, though his human vocal cords couldn't reproduce the pure tones she created naturally. From outside came the sound of Jae-yun's wings cutting through the air. The Avari had regained her full strength, and now performed traditional aerial dances each morning and evening. Her wing membranes shimmered with blues and golds as she traced ancient patterns in the sky. "Teacher," Damai called softly, her energy form glowing steadily as she entered the kitchen. She had taken to calling Suho by the Korean honorific, and the others had followed suit. "I've finished marking the new garden paths." Suho smiled at her progress. The Lumina had learned to create permanent light trails that glowed softly at night, making the homestead's walkways safe and beautiful in the darkness. Her control had improved so much that she could now adjust the brightness based on the natural light levels. In the garden, Yuna had integrated herself completely with the local plants. Her presence had transformed the once simple vegetable plots into a year-round paradise. She had taught Suho about plant communication, showing him how to feel the subtle vibrations that carried messages between growing things. The lake sparkled with Hannah's latest creations. The Aquari had discovered a talent for underwater sculpture, manipulating water pressure to create lasting shapes in the depths. Schools of fish swam through her artistic arches and spirals, making the lake into a living art gallery. Time for cooking lessons, Suho announced, gathering ingredients on the counter. Today they would learn to make kimchi, a process that had fascinated his alien family. Each brought unique perspectives to the traditional Korean dish. Mireille used her crystal surfaces to shred cabbage with perfect precision. Jae-yun's sensitive wingtips could detect the exact ripeness of vegetables. Dame maintained the ideal fermentation temperature with her energy field. Yuna communicated with the vegetables to ensure peak flavor. Hannah purified and balanced the brine solution. As they worked, Suho told them the story of the Korean kingdom's first kimchi makers, just as his grandmother had told him. The girls listened intently, adding their own cultural stories about preserved foods. Mireille described crystal-aged delicacies, while Jae-yun spoke of sky-dried fruits caught in high-altitude nets. Their shared meals had become a beautiful mix of cultures. Alongside Korean dishes, they enjoyed crystalline confections that sang on the tongue, cloud-caught Avari specialties, energy-infused beverages that sparkled like starlight, living salads that Yuna grew in moments, and Hannah's water-shaped delicacies that held impossible flavors. Evenings were for storytelling. Suho taught them Korean folk tales, acting out the parts as his grandfather had done for him. In return, Mireille created crystal holograms of Zenith myths, while Jae-yun performed aerial interpretations of Avari legends. Dae-mai painted with light to show Lumina histories, Yuna grew story vines that acted out self-parables, and Hannah made water puppet shows of Aquari tales. They learned each other's festivals and celebrations. The homestead celebrated the Korean Harvest Festival alongside the Zenith Crystal Song Day, the Avari Sky Dance, the Lumina Light Joining, the Sylph Blooming Time, and the Aquari Flow Gathering. Language lessons filled quiet afternoons. Suho mastered the basics of 5 new tongues while teaching Korean. Their dinner conversations became wonderful mixtures of all 6 languages, with much laughter over mispronunciations and accidental puns. One evening, as they sat watching the twin suns set, Mireille created a crystal prism that combined all their native music into a single beautiful harmony. Jae-yun danced to the melody while Domai provided a light show. Yuna's plants swayed in rhythm, and Hannah conducted water streams in graceful arcs. Suho watched his family with pride, remembering the frightened slaves they'd been just months ago. Now they were artists, teachers, friends, each bringing their unique gifts to their shared home. "Teacher," Mireille said softly, her crystal voice chiming like temple bells, "you gave us more than freedom. You gave us a place to be ourselves." The others agreed in their own ways. A wing touch from Jae-yun, a warm glow from Demai, a flower crown from Yuna, a cool mist from Hannah. Suho felt his heart swell with love for his unusual family. That night, as Mireille's crystal songs drifted on the evening air, mixed with Jae-yun's aerial hymns and Dame's light harmonies, while Yuna's night-blooming flowers opened and Hannah's fountain music played, Suho knew he had found something far more precious than the retirement he'd originally planned. They were no longer rescuer and rescued, teacher and students, but a true family, bound by love and trust rather than blood or species. Their differences had become their strength, their shared knowledge a bridge between worlds. As he drifted off to sleep, Suho smiled at the sounds of his family's night routine. The gentle crystal chimes, wing whispers, energy hums, leaf rustles, and water songs that had become his favorite lullaby. Suho's recovery had been faster than anyone expected. The combined healing efforts of his 5 companions had worked wonders, but there was something else too, a warmth in his heart that seemed to grow stronger each day. One morning, as he sat in the sunroom reading, Mireille approached him with unusual shyness. Her crystal form shimmered with colors he'd never seen before. In her hands, she held something that glowed from within. A perfect crystal heart, its facets catching the light in impossible ways. "This contains my essence," Mireille explained softly, her voice chiming like delicate bells. "Among my people, we offer a part of our core to the one we wish to bond with eternally." She held out the heart, which pulsed with a gentle light in time with her own crystalline form. Before Suho could respond, Jai-yun glided through the open door. Her wings were fully extended, shimmering with patterns he'd never seen before. Without a word, she began to dance in the air above them. Each movement told a story, her wing colors shifting through shades that spoke of love, commitment, and eternal bonds. "The sacred sky dance," she explained between graceful turns, "is performed only once in an Avari's life, for the one they choose as their eternal flight partner." Her wings painted love poems in the air as she moved. Damai appeared next, her energy form more focused and controlled than ever before. She approached Suho and carefully extended her glowing hand. As she touched his chest, her energy frequency shifted, perfectly matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. "I have synchronized my core frequency to your life force," she said, her voice harmonizing with his pulse. "This is the deepest bond my people can form. Our energies will always be in harmony." The plants near the window suddenly burst into bloom as Yuna stepped forward. In her hands, she held a crown woven from living flowers, flowers that seemed to glow with their own inner light. "These blooms are part of me," she explained, her leaf hair swaying gently. "They will never wilt or die, just as my love will never fade." From the small indoor pool came a soft splash as Hannah emerged. In her cupped hands floated a perfect sphere, a pearl that seemed to hold the essence of the ocean itself. "This pearl contains my purest self," she said, her voice flowing like a gentle stream. "Among the Aquari, we can only create one such pearl in our lifetime, meant for our eternal partner." Suho looked at each of them in turn, the crystal heart pulsing with life, the dance of eternal love still continuing above, the energy being that beat in time with his heart, the crown of undying flowers, and the pearl that held the essence of the seas. "We know this is unexpected." Mireille spoke for all of them, her crystal form casting rainbow lights across the room. "But you gave us more than freedom. You gave us a home, a family, and love we never thought possible. Among all our peoples," Jai-yun added, landing gracefully beside him. "Age is seen as a blessing, a sign of wisdom and strength. Your years are not a barrier but a gift." Dama's glow warmed the room as she said, "We have learned that love transcends physical forms. Energy, crystal, water, plant, wing, or human flesh. What matters is the spirit within." Yuna's flowers released a sweet fragrance as she stepped closer. "We offer these bonds not from gratitude or obligation, but from pure love that has grown naturally like the strongest trees in my forests." Hannah's pearl caught the light as she moved forward. 5 different species, 5 different types of love, but all flowing toward the same heart. "Yours." Suho looked at each of them. Beings he had rescued, who had become his students, his friends, and now offered to become something more. He saw no doubt in their faces, only love expressed in 5 uniquely beautiful ways. His old heart beat faster as he realized this wasn't the end of their story, but a new beginning. The crystal heart pulsed in harmony with his heartbeat. Jai-yun's dance wrote their future in the air. Demi's energy wrapped around him like a warm embrace. Yuna's flowers sang of eternal spring, and Hannah's pearl promised depths of love as endless as the ocean. "Love," Suho said softly, "knows no boundaries, not of age, not of species, not of form." He opened his arms to them, and they came to him. Crystal, wing, energy, plant, and water, each bringing their own kind of love to create something entirely new and wonderfully unique. As they embraced, Mireille's crystal heart began to sing, Jai-yun's wings created a canopy of light above them. Dama's energy wrapped them all in a gentle glow. Yuna's flowers released joyful perfume, and Hannah's pearl cast reflections like stars across their faces. The morning light streamed through the sunroom windows, catching each of them in its glow. 6 beings who had found love across the boundaries of space, species, and time. Their homestead had become more than a sanctuary. It had become the foundation of something beautiful and new in the universe. The morning of the ceremony dawned with both suns creating a double rainbow across the dome of New Jeju. Suho stood in his traditional Korean hanbok, watching as his brides prepared in their own unique ways. Mairei had crafted herself a hanbok entirely from living crystal, each piece catching the light and sending prisms dancing across the walls. The crystal fabric chimed softly as she moved, creating music with every step. She had woven traditional Korean patterns into the crystalline structure, honoring both her new family and her own heritage. Jai-yun soared overhead, her fully healed wings painting the sky with colors of joy. She practiced the ancient Averi marriage songs, her voice carrying notes that seemed to come from the stars themselves. Her wing membranes shimmered with patterns that told the story of their unusual family. Dalmai had transformed the entire ceremony space into a light show that rivaled the auroras of Earth. She created curtains of gentle light that shifted between colors, each shade representing a different kind of love and lumina culture. Her own form glowed with happiness, perfectly steady and controlled. Yuna had outdone herself with the decorations. Flowers bloomed everywhere, some traditional Korean blossoms, others from her own world, and many new hybrids she had created just for this day. Her fine hair was dotted with tiny glowing blooms that pulsed with her heartbeat. Hana blessed the ceremony space with sacred water, creating intricate patterns in the air that caught the light like liquid diamonds. She had formed a circle of floating water spheres around the ceremony space, each containing memories of their time together. The local community had gathered to witness the unusual wedding. Some came out of curiosity, others out of support, and a few simply to gossip. But as the ceremony began, even the skeptics fell silent in awe. Suho stood in the center as each bride approached in turn. Mairei stepped forward first, her crystal form singing the traditional Korean wedding song in perfect harmony with her crystalline hanbok. She placed a crystal lei around his neck, one that would forever echo with her love song. Jai-yun descended from above, performing the sacred spiral of unity, an ancient Averi marriage flight. Her wings created patterns of light that told their love story as she landed beside Suho, joining her wing to his hand in the eternal bond of her people. Damai approached next, her energy form perfectly aligned with Suho's heartbeat. She created a display of lights that formed a bridge between their life forces, making visible the harmony they shared. The lights settled into a gentle aura around them both, a permanent sign of their connection. Yuna came forward surrounded by a garden of walking flowers. She wove living strands of her essence into a crown for Suho, plants that would grow and flourish with their love. Each bloom whispered stories of devotion in the language of growing things. Hana completed the circle, bringing forth water from the sacred springs of her homeworld. She performed the Aquari blessing of eternal tides, binding their lives together like rivers flowing to the same sea. The blessed water formed a shimmering band around Suho's wrist, a living symbol of their bond. The local official who performed the earth ceremony seemed almost unnecessary amid the alien rituals, but Suho had insisted on making their union legal by every standard. As the human words were spoken, 5 different forms of I do filled the air, in crystal chimes, wing whispers, light pulses, flower songs, and water music. After the ceremony, the community celebration began. Those who had come to whisper found themselves drawn into the joy of the occasion. How could anyone doubt the love that shone so clearly in 6 different forms? Suho's home transformed into a place of endless wonder. Meirei's crystal songs filled the morning air, while Jai-yun's aerial ballets painted the sunset. Damai lit their nights with living starlight, as Yuna's gardens bloomed with flowers that glowed in the dark. Hana's water sculptures danced in the moonlight, telling stories of their love. Most remarkable was the change in Suho himself. The combined healing abilities of his wives worked subtle magic. His steps grew lighter, his eyes brighter, his smile more frequent. He wasn't growing younger, exactly, but he was growing stronger, sustained by 5 different forms of love. Their home became known across New Jeju as a place of harmony and healing. Visitors who came to stare remained to wonder at how 6 such different beings could create such a perfect whole. Children especially loved to visit, enchanted by crystal songs, wing dances, light shows, walking flowers, and water plays. Many nights found the unusual family gathered in their garden, sharing stories and dreams. Mei Rei would create crystal holograms of their memories, while Jai Yun performed aerial interpretations. Dai Mai painted with light as Yuna grew story vines, and Hana conducted water symphonies. Suho would sit among them, his heart full of a love that transcended all boundaries. Years passed, but their joy only grew stronger. Their home became a testament to what love could build, a place where different species, cultures, and traditions blended into something new and beautiful. Suho's retirement had become an adventure greater than any he had known in his military days. Together, they had created something unprecedented in the galaxy, a family bound not by blood or species, but by choice and love. Their stories spread across the stars, inspiring others to look beyond the surface and find love in unexpected places. And every morning, as the twin suns rose over New Jeju, their home rang with crystal songs, wing music, energy harmonies, flower whispers, and water symphonies, the sound of 6 hearts beating as one, creating their own kind of perfect harmony.